We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's time for Headliners, looking at tomorrow's papers. Dmitry Bakanov and the rather self-indulgent Nick Dixon. Let me tell you, we've got some big stories to get through, including news about Liverpool in the Champions League. But first, here are the headlines with Polly.
Mark, thank you. The top stories tonight. The Labour Party is to push for a vote on the Prime Minister's decision to change the Ministerial Code of Conduct. Critics say the Prime Minister's proposal waters down rules applying to those on the government's front benches. But the Cabinet Office said it would be disproportionate for ministers to lose their jobs for minor breaches. The changes suggest ministers should not be automatically losing their jobs if they breach the code, but they should instead face salary suspensions or issue a public apology. Donald Trump has told a pro-gun convention rally in America that security in schools across the country should be ramped up. The former president was speaking at a National Rifle Association convention held just days after the murder of 19 primary school children and 2 of their teachers in Texas. Hundreds of protesters were gathered outside the arms show, holding up photographs of the dead children and calling for tighter gun controls. Trump, however, rejected their demands, instead calling for a top-to-bottom overhaul of school security. The leaders of France and Germany have been urging President Putin to hold direct negotiations with Ukraine's President Zielinski. That comes as Russian forces claim to have taken control of a key rail hub in the eastern Donbass region of Ukraine. In Kiev, officials say its soldiers may need to retreat from their last stronghold to avoid being captured. The Kremlin has sent thousands of troops into Luhansk in an attempt to encircle Ukrainian forces who are still fighting to protect the area. President Zielinski says the situation in Ukraine is getting worse.
The situation is very complicated, especially in those areas in the Donbass and Kharkiv region where the Russian army is trying to squeeze at least some result for themselves. It's indescribably difficult there, and I'm grateful to all those who withstood this onslaught of the occupiers. But Ukraine will get everything back, everything, and it's certain, and it's only a matter of time. And every day that time, the time of liberation, is getting closer. We are doing everything to make it happen.
President Zielinski. Well, here, as the UK prepares to celebrate Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee, the Prime Minister says no monarch has served the country so well. In a personal message to the Queen, the Prime Minister thanked her for her exemplary service, praising the institution of the Crown and the exceptional individual who wears it. Boris Johnson also described the Queen as a steadying, guiding force for the nation, adding that Her Majesty embodied the very idea of what a constitutional monarchy should be. And some sad news, particularly if you're a Liverpool fan. Liverpool were denied a 7th European trophy tonight as Real Madrid were crowned Champions League winners. Against the run of play, Vinicius Jr. snuck behind Trent Alexander-Arnold to score the only goal in the 57th minute. Meanwhile, Thibaut Courtois produced a stellar performance to keep Liverpool at bay. Madrid have now won a record 14 Champions League titles. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now it's time for Headliners.
Hello, and I'm Mark Dolan. It's a good start to the show. How does TV work? Let me tell you, it's live, and it's Headliners, tomorrow's papers, as seen by two top comedians, and occasionally two comedians come along who are the full package, extraordinarily funny, blessed with a razor-sharp wit and a searing intellect. Those two comedians on Tuesday, I believe. Tonight we've got Dmitry Bakhanov and Nick Dixon. Hello, lads. How are we?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Listen, it's great to see both of you. Lots of stories to get through. Let's have a look at tomorrow's front pages. And we'll start with the Sunday Telegraph. PM's war on rip-off petrol stations. Furious Johnson vows to name and shame those who fail to pass on the fuel duty cut. Also, driving tests grind to a halt until next year. Learners face having to wait until 2023 to actually do their driving test because of problems at the DVSA, which is the safety agency arm of the government. Also, pounds and ounces are back in time for the Jubilee. The Observer next. Johnson is trashing Tory identity, party grandees warn. Boris Johnson has plunged the Tory party into an acute identity crisis as a result of Partygate and U-turns over tax policy. Senior Tories warned last night as more MPs called for him to resign as Prime Minister. Former Tory leader Ian Duncan-Smith told The Observer his party had been left with an enormous identity problem because it had raised taxes instead of cutting them under Johnson and the Chancellor Rishi Sunak, undermining a core Tory message that had helped win it successful elections. Sunday Times next. It's the Saturday Times. Sunday Times. Wait a minute, what the hell day of the week is it? It is going to be tomorrow's Sunday Times, you're quite right. It's weird because the still we've got says Sunday Times Saturday. I'm very confused. But let's have a look. Teachers should not pander to trans pupils. Schools do not have to accommodate children who want to change gender, the Attorney General has declared. And those are your headlines. Pretty sure that was Saturday's Times, but we'll have a Stuart inquiry very shortly. Let's go to our first story. The Independent and the Attorney General has some topical guidance for schools, Nick.
Yes, this is Suella Braverman. Attorney General says schools do not have to accommodate children's gender wishes, and the Times as teachers should not pander to trans pupils. So this is one of these moments where a politician gives us a breadcrumb of truth and we all get very excited that they've actually stood up and said something that needed to be said. So Suella Braverman has pointed out that under 18s cannot get a gender recognition certificate. They can't legally change sex. So schools can look at that as an example of how to treat them. She said that they shouldn't be allowed in girls' toilets if they just decide they're a different gender. She's noted that there are huge disparities around the country based on how those teachers are behaving in the number of trans people, which she thinks is questionable. You know, why is it so different around the country? Is it to do with how local authorities and teachers are behaving? And I love this comment that she said as well. She said that she gets so much abuse on Twitter, but it's got to the point where if she gets trolled on Twitter and provokes a bad response, she knows she's doing the right thing because Twitter is a sewer of left-wing bile. I mean, just absolutely knocking it out of the park with the truths here. And I just think it's really interesting. we've had this recent thing, which we'll talk about later, with Stella Creasy saying that, women can have penises and all this. I think it's fascinating that Suella Braverman is an alleged conservative, but she is standing up for feminism and women's rights against the left, against Stella Creasy, who's got an aristocratic background, Suella Braverman being a daughter of immigrants. I almost went trans there. I almost transitioned there.
Blimey,
a daughter of immigrants. So it's just fascinating that, that's become the conservative side. And I just think it's really interesting that she said here that she's a child of the British Empire, and she sees that as a good thing, which we don't hear a lot these days. She says that the empire was a force for good. So that's all in the article. So, yeah, just very interesting. She's standing up for, being sensible and using common sense when it comes to kids just saying they're a different gender. Suddenly she's saying, well, teachers shouldn't necessarily encourage that. She believes she seems to believe it's been encouraged too much, and we should take a different stance on that.
Yeah, what do we think? Is the pendulum swinging the other way, do you think?
I think it's just giving teachers an easy out and is saying hey, don't get involved in this conversation, rather than encouraging it in schools, which can be annoying to parents as well who don't want to deal with it. And
That's right.
If I was a teacher, honestly, I would love this, because it gives me an out to say, hey, I don't need to be involved in this. Please, this is a difficult question and I want nothing to do with it.
And also, since when did teachers have to become great experts on sex and gender and all that stuff? I mean, I remember I was a kid, I learnt the birds and the bees from my friend James Dickens. Not literally, by the way.
I was going to say, what did he tell you?
But he explained it to me on the way to swimming. And that's all.
It was tell, not show.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our next story. The Sunday Times now, and guess what, Dimitri? People aren't happy with Boris Johnson.
Yeah, so this is... you've mentioned this story before, and this is just the fact that Boris Johnson is losing popularity all over the place. Because of the Partygate scandal, because of the U-turns and the tax policies, people don't think Boris Johnson is going to lead Conservatives to victory next time round. And it's kind of, the fact that this is gaining more and more momentum and more MPs are signing up for him to resign, it's interesting because I think this is way after the horse has bolted. I'm kind of confused why MPs have waited for this long to do this, because you'd think they're supposed to be savvy political animals that know what's going on, and yet they've taken all this time until he's pretty much dead in the water to kind of start writing letters against him and saying, hey, let's go the other way. And it's also, they also talk about how he's essentially abandoning conservative values by, increasing taxes instead of cutting them, which, kind of rings true.
Well, that's right. You wonder whether the Tories fall between two stools of, perceived by Labour as not doing enough to support people in the cost of living crisis, but annoying grassroots by raising taxes and spending money.
Yeah. There's really a war between Conservatives and Tories, which Steve Baker has called it himself. There's the actual Conservatives in the Conservative Party, which are kind of people with classical liberal-type beliefs, and then there's the Tories that are sort of power-hungry public schoolboys, and that's part of the divide. But, yeah, I feel like if they were doing better on cost of living and national insurance, pointing out the benefits of Brexit and all this kind of thing, maybe they'd be OK. But it's when they're actually doing all these unconservative things, then something like Partygate comes along, makes them very vulnerable because they've, like you say, they've alienated their base.
But the thing is, though, Dimitri, I wonder whether we look at it from the other angle, which is it neutralises Labour by having such a socialist Prime Minister.
Well, he's not a socialist, is he? He's just trying to save his own skin no matter what.
He's impersonating one at the moment, though, isn't he?
Well,
if you think about, enormous borrowing, I mean, what's this help for energy bills going to cost the Exchequer? £15 billion?
Yeah.
So, it's difficult. Don't you think politically it's hard for Labour? It's like, where do they go from here with the Tories splashing the cash and supporting the poorest in our society?
Labour don't have to do much. Labour, the Conservatives are shooting themselves in the foot by allowing Boris to stay in, I'm guessing. I have no idea about politics, really. I just, follow the news.
But what about, I mean, you're a stand-up comedian, right? And you know all about stage presence, about star quality, of which you have an enormous volume yourself. Don't you think Boris Johnson's got that star quality?
Yes, of course he does. This is why he's been able to go on for as long as he has.
And are we not writing him off too soon?
No, I think he's probably dead in the water. The advantage he had before was running against Corbyn, which was very easy to do. I could have won against Corbyn. But now Keir Starmer, who, by the way, I think is a very big gambler. Because, he staked his whole leadership bid on the fact that the police are going to find him innocent.
Yeah.
Which I don't trust the government when I appeal a parking fine. And the man is gambling his career on it. And I don't know if we want a degenerate gambler as a leader either.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. I like the gambling angle. Well, let's move on now. In the Sunday Times, perhaps the Red Wall is being rebuilt, Dimitri. These stories are related, aren't they?
Exactly. This is just a continuation from the Times about the fact that Boris looks like he's going to be, I think the term is decapitated, when the Prime Minister doesn't win his local election. And he looks like because about 60% of the country think he should resign. So the fact that he may lose his seat would be incredible, but it would actually support the British system, I think. It would show that the British system works, the fact that you can just get rid of the leader.
Now, the question is, do you actually care about Partygate? See, I don't care about Partygate. I think the lockdowns themselves were a heinous crime. I care about the lockdowns much more so than the actual the hypocrisy, which was annoying but wasn't the main thing. But people seem to care about Partygate amongst the Red Wall when you look at these polls. And they seem to be judging Boris very harshly for that because they think he's let them down. He doesn't have any integrity. And Starmer, like you say, it's a gamble, but he's positioned himself as sort of Mr. Integrity with his "I'll resign" thing. So this is the big problem for Boris, and it's got to the point now where Tories are going to worry about losing seats. So there's talk here that it's projected that Ian Duncan-Smith could lose his seat, Steve Baker could lose his seat. To be fair, Steve Baker, he's already called out Boris and said he should go. But I think what's going to happen is if they keep seeing polls like this, obviously more of them are going to say he should go when their own seats are under threat. So that is the danger for Boris. I think it's a shame because, in a way, because I personally don't care that much about Partygate. I find it a shame, but people do seem to care.
Yes, I mean, I wonder whether Boris goes beyond politics. He transcends Westminster, that he represents a certain set of hopes of a generation of voters, a bit perhaps like Trump in America, and that if Boris goes, there'll be huge anger that this Prime Minister has been unseated.
Well, I did think that, but when I do see that. I do see that on Twitter. I see that amongst the back Boris people. But then I see these polls that he would get wiped out and he's going to lose all but three of
the polls. I mean, who believes the polls?
Well, I know what you mean. Yeah. This is saying he'd lose all but three of the battleground seats. So that's the question. There does seem to be a genuine anger in the north about, Boris was expected to do certain things he didn't. I think if he was delivering, if there wasn't this cost of living thing, gas prices, if there wasn't everything else that's going on, and maybe without COVID, but that is a lot of ifs. But without those things, he could be all right. And we could look past this. But when he's not delivering on other things that people want, that's the danger.
So many Labour voters hate the Labour Party now.
This
is the thing. Well. You could argue that really it's Boris Johnson's to lose, even if he's unpopular.
Well, that's true. That would be the great shame if you let in this Labour Party and especially if it was that left-wing coalition that some people have talked about, because we'd end up like the 70s. It'd be the most left-wing government we ever had, and it would be a total disaster. Do you remember the 70s?
Yeah, of course.
3-day weeks and all that. That would be my fear.
Yeah, I mean, let me read you this tweet from Bill Etheridge, who's a sort of commentator on Twitter, very much a sort of libertarian, freedom-loving commentator, and a working-class man who claims to speak for real working people. Here is some sad reality, he says. Boris and the Tories can do whatever they want because no matter how they behave, people detest Labour so much that the Tories will win.
I thought that until very recently. Now I'm starting to wonder, with this Partygate thing haunting him, if that is really the case.
Could people bring themselves to vote for Keir Starmer when he famously tried to reverse Brexit by pushing the second referendum policy?
Do you know what? I wish people remembered that. I wish they remembered that he wanted...
I think everyone in the Red Wall remembers that, don't they?
Oh, well, I wish they did. I mean, I don't know. I can't speak for them, but if Starmer wanted stronger lockdowns, he tried to reverse Brexit. He did all these terrible things, but that seems to, at the moment, have been forgotten because of the Partygate and the fact that he's seen as Mr. Integrity about it. That's my worry. I hope I'm wrong on that.
Nick, I know you're very pro-vaccine, and I believe you've been boosted 10 times.
Yes, I got boosted today again, just in case.
Three times on national television.
Yeah.
Once for a laugh with your mates.
I've had my monkeypox booster, and I'm way ahead of the game. Yeah.
I say that the monkeypox booster it really suits you. You've got more facial hair now.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I'm gradually turning into a monkey, but it's fine.
Well, tell us about this. Sunday Telegraph.
Happy to.
Consequences to the AstraZeneca vaccine.
Yes, AstraZeneca vaccine may increase risk of serious neurological condition. Some on the internet would say, OBS, which one? But this is Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a rare condition, causes numbness and pain, hinders movement, swallowing and so on. Normally caused by Campylobacter, which is a stomach bug, basically. But the danger is that the AstraZeneca vaccine works as a Trojan horse delivery system, their words, not mine, and that it sort of mimics human cells in a way that's similar to Campylobacter and therefore gets in and causes this terrible syndrome. Now, you've got to be very careful because of broadcast regulations, how you speak about the dodgy death jab. But it is... we're seeing... Well, it's interesting because on the internet, you'll find many, many anecdotal stories, and if you talk to people about dangers of the vaccine, I was even speaking to my mum the other day. She said it had brought on someone's leukemia, and the doctor even had said that. I have to check that story, but it was something like that. People have all these anecdotal stories about vaccine damage, so it's interesting now that the Telegraph, this is an acknowledged 40% rise in this syndrome, and that these are coming out now as acknowledged. So you wonder how many other syndromes, how many other side effects will become official soon. I say probably a lot more.
I mean, you're calling it the death jab. I think that's
satire.
Well, exactly. It probably is satire. And
it happens to be also my opinion, but it's also satire.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is, the government are clear that the vaccine has been tested, that it's safe. I mean, the point is that it will have arguably saved many more lives than, this will be a fraction of the population who might experience side effects.
Yeah, well, you say it's a fraction. The layman observing, looking at the internet, listening to stories, it seems to be a lot less rare than we've been told. In my opinion, in my non-medical, satirical opinion, you have to say these things for broadcast
regulation. No, I don't think you do. I don't think you
But now it's becoming official.
You shouldn't be censored on your own show. The bottom line is that thousands of people are getting side effects from the vaccine, and people are dying from it too. That is a fact, isn't it? That's not opinion.
Right, and what I'm saying is now that this one's being acknowledged, one wonders how many others will be acknowledged, and it's absolutely tragic. That's all I'm saying.
And then the point, Dimitri, is this is why you should not be coercing people into having the vaccine. Most people watching this programme take the view that it's been miraculous that they turned it around so quickly. It's the view of the government and many scientists that those in the vulnerable groups have had their lives saved by the vaccine. But do we need to think again about the pressure on young people who are at low risk from having the jab?
As a non-scientist who did spend most of the pandemic running a vaccination centre, I can honestly tell you, I have no idea.
But the pressure is not justified, is it, to have the vaccine?
How would I know? I don't know.
Why did you decide to work in a vaccination centre?
Because I needed a job. And it was a pandemic. That's how it goes.
Look, I welcome the arrival of the vaccine, but it's this question of, you say, how should I know? But just in terms of, as a member of society, why are we pressuring people through, for example, mandates that you're going to lose your job in a care home or in a medical setting if you don't have the vaccine?
Well, that got turned around right before it became legal. Listen, as an avid gambler, I will say that the fact that young people had to do it when they're statistically low risk, they were at a low risk, I wouldn't have gone for it personally. But, I did it so I can travel.
Yeah, and I've got to say very much same for me. Dimitri, I appreciate your candour on that one. A quick one before the break, and it's politics. Stella Creasy disagrees with J.K. Rowling's definition of what a woman is. Dimitri, what is the quote?
Yeah, so this is... the Telegraph did get an amazing quote. Stella Creasy says, J.K. Rowling is wrong. A woman can have a penis. Which brings me some relief, having been to Thailand. But it's one of those things. I do love the fact that Stella Creasy propositioned this by saying sometimes you have to break cover and be controversial, as if this is rare for her. I think this is her entire method of being right now, is just go for the headlines, just do whatever's provocative, bring your baby to the House of Commons for a debate.
It's true.
Yeah, so... But, so essentially she's just kind of saying she wants to clarify her position on the word woman. And she said, do I think some women were born with penises? The answer is yes.
Yeah, what she's doing, because Keir Starmer and others have sort of tiptoed around this issue. They've been on the fence about it, haven't they? Said, whoa, it's a very difficult question to answer, what defines a woman? And they've fudged it, right? Creasy is basically kind of appealing to the very woke side of the Labour grassroots, and that would be in big cities like London and the South East. She's just going for the woke vote, isn't she, and doubling down.
Oh, 100%. And the fact that she represents Walthamstow really helps her, because that's kind of a new, hip, central place where a lot of those ideas are supported. But she's using a lot of her personal experience to back this up and to say how, because she's a woman, she's not taken seriously, and she's getting these new women to side with her. One of the ways that she's doing is, I love the fact that any criticism that comes against her, she deflects by saying, this is because I'm a woman.
Yeah.
Which I think she needs to essentially stop giving women a bad name and accept the fact that she has a bad personality.
She says, as an old-fashioned feminist, I'm still fighting the patriarchy, which is something posh white women say to feel oppressed. I mean, she talks here about people don't trust politics because of privilege and entitlement, yet she's come from an aristocratic background, gone to Oxbridge, she went straight into the Fabian Society as an intern. It's a sort of ultra-privileged, hard left background. It's the worst of all worlds. You come from an aristocratic background, you go to Cambridge, then you come out with all these hard left-wing views that don't help anyone. I just think it's fascinating, like I said before, that Suella Braverman comes from a immigrant background and actually has ended up having conservative views. And this is where we are now with the parties. They've almost completely flipped in that sense.
Stella did say that women should be able to say things without being judged, which I feel is an easy out, right? So kind of, especially when you're accusing somebody or telling somebody to do things the right way or, your way, and they say, just don't judge me. It's like, well, don't tell me what to do.
Dimitri, I don't think that, because I'm super pro-trans, if you want to identify as a different gender, you have my love, support and respect. But extreme trans ideology, which questions the existence of human biology, that there is a male, biological female, to support that is A, anti-scientific, and B, it's not compatible with being a feminist. I don't think that Stella Creasy can call herself a feminist if she supports trans ideology.
Yeah.
They're not compatible, are they? How can they be?
Can I just say this thing?
Can you be a feminist and pro-trans ideology?
It's exactly, she addresses it here. She says, I'm not interested in fighting amongst ourselves, meaning women. She says, it's right for me to stand with my trans sisters and say, let's fight these battles together. But she's describing two opposing sides.
Pass me the six bag.
Well, it's impossible anyway. It's logically impossible. It's like saying, are you Tory or Labour? Yes. She's trying to say that she's both sides of the argument.
You know what it is? Feminists supports people with penises.
Right. Right. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Help me with that one if you can. Paul Embry, who is a GBNews presenter, of course, he's back tomorrow in the political correction, has tweeted, for as long as Labour MPs make these sorts of crackpot statements, the party will be outside of moderate mainstream opinion in the UK, and I think, ergo, outside of power as well. That's it for part one. In part two, these two will be getting their teeth into the hypocritical Bristol mayor that flew 9 hours to a climate conference, Donald Trump's statement on the recent US school massacre, and something called Fobbing. Me neither. See you shortly.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was, in fact, a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick.
Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
I'm Mark Dolan. Welcome back to Headliners, a first look at tomorrow's papers. Tonight in the company of two archetypes of peak masculinity, Dmitry Bakanov and Nick Dixon. Look at that. Lock up your daughters. More for their protection, really, than anyone else's. The Sunday Express now, and has the Bristol mayor not heard of Zoom or Skype, Dmitry?
We're doing a mayor one.
Yeah, the Bristol mayor story. I mean, I find this one amazing. What do you think?
Yeah, I personally love it because the fact that he's declared a climate emergency and then flew over to Canada to present at a TED conference about the fact that there's climate problems. And of course, a lot of climate campaigners have complained, or climate change campaigners have complained, the fact that he's used up a lot of CO2, and stuff like that in flying over there, which I guess they complained online by typing in their computers, which are powered by electricity, which produces CO2. I kind of think they should have sent in their complaints via carrier pigeon, really and truly.
Organic.
Yeah, exactly. I would have said, originally I wanted to say smoke signals, but I guess that's also CO2, so it doesn't really work.
If you use the pigeon to send a message, is it wrong to eat the pigeon afterwards or not?
No, that's the most ecological thing you can do.
Yeah, but that's meat, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you've got to free it, I suppose, back to whatever they do.
I mean, sure, why not? I would personally eat the pigeon because I think that's your reward. Why not? Look, in general, a lot of the climate stuff, people have a lot of certainty over these things. I haven't. Again, with my scientific background, I know nothing.
I agree. Listen, I'm with you on climate change. I just don't know what's going on. It's clear that the planet is heating up. I think the argument is that some suggest that that's natural, that it's a cycle, and that climate change has always happened. But the argument of this mayor will be, look, I've got to fly to this conference in order to get the message out about climate change, that we're too focused on the private jets and so-called hypocrisy, because they could all say, look, we're trying to have a conference to stop climate change. The fact that we've got to fly to do that is just, irrelevant. The means justify the end.
I would say so. People fly all the time. There's people go on holiday all the time, so why not?
Well, there was a complaint, wasn't there, about the foreign secretary flying so much? It's like, well, go figure. Look at her job title. That's her job.
Wasn't that more about the expense of the plane? That was about she was on this plane that cost a lot of taxpayer money. Yeah. I thought that was reasonable. I thought that was a case where she should be allowed to fly on that plane.
Yeah, but people were saying,
general,
she should have done it on Zoom.
Yeah, no, in general, I think there is a problem with hypocrisy. I mean, Emma Thompson even admitted to being a hypocrite. She was flying around the world lecturing us all about climate. The hypocrisy does bother me. I mean, it goes hand in hand. Every time you hear a climate maniac, they're nearly always a hypocrite, aren't they?
Well, look, but possibly so. Let's now talk about Donald Trump. Do you remember him? Well, he's waded into the latest US school shooting. This one is in the Mail on Sunday, Nick.
Yeah, Trump says teachers should be armed, calls for cops in all schools, and slams Uvalde police for taking too long. So, yeah, I mean, this was obviously the horrific Texas shooting, and the cops did take a very long time. They didn't follow protocols. So obviously it's a complicated, very serious debate. The thing about teachers being armed, or even cops being armed and in schools, is that's OK if they actually follow what they're supposed to do. So Mike Baker from the New York Times had a fascinating thread on this. It was a long thread showing how the police hadn't actually followed any of their training. So their training involves going in, and it involves taking a huge risk. It actually says, if you're not prepared to take that risk, you should consider a different career, because they're saying that you may have to go in and risk your life taking out one of these school shooters. And if you get injured, the next person's supposed to come in and do it. These cops didn't behave like that at all. They waited outside the room for an hour or something like that while it all happened. So they've been criticised for that. So Trump, has a point, but it's also how they behave. in general, the gun debate, obviously very emotive debate, people are using this as an opportunistic chance to say, oh, we should ban guns. But America's had guns for many years before, when they didn't have school shootings. Canada has 2 million guns. So to me, you have to look at the background. This kid didn't have a father, his mum was a drug addict. It's usually those things you have to look at, but that's another much bigger debate.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a mess, American society, isn't it? You get the feeling that Americans are going to have to accept these gun attacks on a regular basis?
I think arming teachers is difficult because not every teacher wants to do it. And I think Donald Trump is not taking it far enough. I think you have to arm the kids. Young kids are much better with hand-eye coordination. You know, the teachers normally get killed.
On video games, Grand Theft Auto and everything like that.
Exactly. They get a lot of training, Call of Duty. You know, they know what they're doing. So if you arm the kids, it'll be a lot better.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad shout. Maybe bulletproof vests as well. And
yeah, flak jackets, helmets. It'll be perfect.
Yeah, my goodness, my God, the mind boggles. I mean, we joke, don't we? But
hopefully,
America
this might become
is divided about this. I mean, it's an issue that splits the country, isn't it? Like abortion, you know, gun law.
Yeah, I think it's one of those that's too soon to joke on. I'm not even risking it because I think, yeah, it's a very divisive issue.
Never too soon for you, Dixon.
It's divided between people who think it's the culture and the background. This kid was extensively bullied. Not that that makes it right what he did. He didn't have a father, which is very common with these. He had a disastrous home life. He was extensively bullied. People even referred to him as a school shooter before he even did it. That's how, because he was sort of pigeonholed into that because he was so bullied. And yes, but the Democrats are always going to use it and other people to say, take away the guns. But as we've seen in this country, you can do horrific things without guns, you know, the Westminster attack and so on. So I don't tend to blame the guns. I tend to blame this, you know, the culture, the general degradation of the culture and, you know, the family.
Yeah, but the argument is he was able to do a lot more damage because he had a gun.
Mm-hmm, that is the argument. And then the argument is that Americans need guns to protect themselves. We've seen in countries where they don't have a Second Amendment, you can do basically anything, like Australia, countries that became very authoritarian during COVID. Would that happen in Texas when you have a whole army of people with guns waiting to get out on the streets at night? It discourages tyrannical governments from doing whatever they want. That's the argument. That's why it's in the Constitution.
Yes, and there are more guns in America than people, so even if they do change the laws, it's not really going to reduce the amount of arms available to US citizens. We'll look at an interesting one that will continue as a debate. The Independent now, and has the last few years conditioned us into becoming a nation of hypochondriacs, Dimitri.
Yeah, this is a rapid change from what we were just discussing before. But essentially, the NHS 111 service is overloaded with people who are scared that every single rash that's popping up is monkeypox, because of COVID, people want to react quickly and effectively to everything. So, you know, they're just calling up 111 saying, what can you do? I've called up 111 a few times. They are the easiest service to deal with. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure, but... you know.
They are good. It's pretty good service, isn't it? You get referred to a nurse or a doctor.
Oh, is that your experience? My experience was I wish there would be an electronic system where I could press a number, but...
And you worked for the NHS, so you're the one saying it was bad. I mean, you were the guy on the phone. Just...
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah. I wish I didn't have that job. No. But essentially, one of the things I like, and I find it interesting, is that they have said that this monkeypox is more than likely to spread amongst gay men, bisexual men, or other men that have sex with...
So in other words, if you've got monkeypox, you're sort of showing off, really, aren't you?
Well, essentially, yeah, you could say, like, hey, you're quite good at what you do. But the thing is, what I don't like about this is the fact that it leaves out women with penises who could also spread this. And I think Stella Creasy would be exceptionally upset by that.
Good point.
It's a very good point.
And it is... I do feel sorry for these people all calling up. It's because of the media hype. It's put it into their minds. And, I mean, I'm not going to say my Bill Gates joke again because you ignored me when I said it on your show. But I was saying the other day...
I want to hear the Bill Gates
You want to hear it? I was just saying the other day...
Yeah.
I'm torn on monkeypox because the conspiracy side of me thinks that Bill Gates has released it to reduce the population and sell another, vaccine. But the rational, moderate part of me thinks that Bill Gates has released it as part of his germ theory as a sort of test. So I'm torn between those two. That was a joke. It's a bit complicated, isn't it? But that's where I stand.
It was worth the wait. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it was worth... No, did you like it better the first time or the second time?
It was good on Twitter.
It's a bit like King Lear. You kind of see something new every time. An update now to the medical cannabis dealer story from a couple of weeks ago, Nick.
Mm-hmm. Cannabis dealer let off after cancer patients tell judge how much he helped them. So this is Andrew Baines, 46. He had faced up to 15 years in jail for production and supply of a Class B drug, being cannabis, but it emerged that he'd only supplied it to cancer patients, and this emerged in the court being flooded with loads of letters about how he'd helped them. So it's almost like an independent movie or something. It's like a nice story. He'd helped all these people. He was purely trying to, help with their symptoms. And the solicitors described it as a landmark case because it recognised the difference between people who are criminally involved in a supply of drugs for profit and someone trying to help people. And I do agree that, when you go out on the London street and you smell weed basically everywhere, I think it's fine that a guy is, using it purely for medical purposes. And that is the one use for it. I would ban all drugs in all other circumstances. I mean, I'm against all drugs. I'm against standing up too fast. Do you know what I mean? Even that, it's too much of a buzz for people. But in this case, it's a great thing because he was doing it just to help cancer patients.
There you go. I mean, we've got to be grown up about cannabis, haven't we? It's a fantastic medical application for people in pain. Why do we have to, demonise this medication?
I'm on the opposite side to Nick on this. I would legalise all drugs and let people have fun with it. The thing
people taking heroin in the street, just strung out.
Why not?
Tripping over them in the post office.
Hey, I'm not good at policy, but let's try it and see what happens.
Chaos.
Great. Well, is it going to be worse than that?
I guess you would argue it can't be worse than it currently is, right? That we're losing the war on drugs.
Yeah, and also I don't like the fact that people are taking drugs that are made at home mixed with stuff. But again, I could be... And probably very, very...
In fairness, I use Delia Smith. And her recipes are extremely reliable.
What I found interesting is the fact that Mr. Baines, who claims disability allowance, is, he was driving long distances to deliver drugs and speak to people who have cancer, which, A, I think should be taken care of by NHS, but B, the fact that he's able to grow a lot of weed and drive around the country selling it kind of shows that maybe, he shouldn't be on disability allowance.
Oh, interesting. You're going for the kind of benefit scrounger element.
Not scrounger. I'm saying he is using his time...
You've taken the feel-good out of this feel-good story. I like that. No, maybe you got a point.
OK, well, look, it is time for Nick Dixon to get his monkeypox booster jab. So we'll take a short break, but next up we'll find out all about Fobbing and the middle-class trifecta of au pairs, universities and private school dress codes. And what happens if you wolf whistle a Spaniard? Find out after this.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio. On digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners with me, Mark Dolan. A first look at tomorrow's papers tonight in the company of the hugely talented comedian Dmitry Bakhanov and a man whose mother loves him, Nick Dixon.
So mean.
Sunday Telegraph now, and an article about fubbing. Nick, why don't you just fub off?
OK, Mark.
What I mean is that, I mean, fub off as in develop the fub thing.
Yeah, I didn't hear you. I was looking at my phone. And ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what fubbing is. If you don't know, the headline is fubbing ruining your relationship? Probably not as much as you thought. So, fubbing is where you ignore someone, you're in the middle of a conversation, you suddenly start looking at your phone. It's incredibly obnoxious. But the argument of this article is that our culture has degenerated so much that it's actually not even considered rude anymore. 450 people were surveyed, and 95% felt fubbing was not personal and accepted that phones are often used simply out of habit. So this is where we've arrived at, really. And the times when it really bothers me are when you're in the middle of saying something serious and someone looks at your phone. I once had a situation in America. I was out with someone, and because it was really expensive for me to get data, they just went on their phone, and I couldn't without spending a huge amount of money. So then you're in real trouble. You know what I mean? Normally you can just go on your own phone, but I'm saying when you can't, that's when it's an absolute nightmare. But in general, I think it's rude, and I think our society has degenerated that we think this is OK now.
I think you're just being sensitive. Like,
me?
Yeah, because it's just a clear
never.
indicator that you should improve your communication skills. If you're boring the hell out of somebody where they go, I'd just rather scroll for Instagram pointlessly, then, you know, kind of step up your game.
But can anyone compete with the... Ever since we've had mobile phones, I've noticed when you're talking to someone,
it's true.
It doesn't matter who you're talking to, they get a message. That always takes precedent. I mean, you're in the room with Mark Dolan, it doesn't get any more interesting. But
Correct.
someone else messages you, and for some reason, Mark doesn't matter anymore because non-room person, who hasn't even bothered being in the room, takes precedence. Why is that?
Because whilst I enjoy spending time with Mark Dolan, that message could be opening up a gateway to a lot of, let's say, sexual opportunities for me.
I see.
Whilst
that's a good
Mark
point.
is a very good-looking man, he's far too tall for me.
Do you know what? When it used to just be Nokia... When it was just Nokia 3210s, I'm moving on from that, that's when it really annoyed me because all it was a message from someone else who hadn't bothered being in the room. Now that you've got the entire world and the entire internet, I do see that it's obviously a temptation to go on your phone.
I think you just, like, you're insecure because now you're competing with the entire world.
But I knew a guy who you're talking to him, and literally halfway through the conversation, he just suddenly zones out and he's on it. That's mental, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
At least wait a second, do it at a pause.
But also just walk away from that person.
Yeah, well, I have.
There you go. Perfect.
Do you know what you mean? It's interesting, isn't it? We've only had smartphones for about 12, 13 years. It's relatively new technology. And I think we haven't created, Dimitri, the etiquettes around this technology because it's still so new.
Yeah, well, this is actually what part of this article is about, is the fact that whilst a lot of people used to take it as a huge insult, now people understand and they go, oh, no, I understand you want to check your feed, I understand you want to check your information. And also, we used to just finish work and that would be the end of it. But now your input is coming in at all times of day and night. So a lot of things are happening. And you should stay connected.
Correct. And, you know, what is more entertaining, Nick Dixon or Angry Birds?
Right.
By the way, Angry Birds, the game, not the exotic website.
Or annoyed women.
Yeah, I thought you were going there.
Fascinating conversation. Let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph. And Cambodia wants to gain entry to the British Museum, Dimitri. Surely it's too big to fit in there.
Yeah, you're right. This is the article that's basically saying that Cambodia wants to have a look at the stockpile of treasures that the British Museum has to see what parts of it they like and they would like to take home. This is the story that essentially a lot of Cambodian artifacts were smuggled out of the country and sold off, including to the British Museum, and now Cambodia has undertaken a mission to start retrieving it and taking it back. Which, in one respect, I understand. If your house was robbed, you'd want the stuff back. But if it's 50 years down the line, maybe somebody's taking care of this stuff.
Well, exactly. I mean, sorry, if they took back all the stolen things, all British museums would close. We wouldn't have anything. I mean, and when I say stolen, obviously I mean won, because we conquered places and got their stuff. That's how it works. This one's a little different because it's saying it was actually nicked. It wasn't the empire. But yeah, in general, that's what museums are, isn't it?
And the British Museum is full of artefacts that might not be in existence if it wasn't for their curation.
Good point.
For the enormous cost of retrieving some of these items, like the Elgin marbles, and keeping them safely in London rather than being looted or destroyed through war.
Good point. We're doing a great service, Mark.
I think so.
By nicking lots of stuff from around the world.
We're essentially a security vault for a lot of these treasures. And also, how far back do you go back with these things? Because there's a point at which, like, you know, Italy could come here and be like, oh, we built roads, give us back the bricks.
Right.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, let's move on. Let's see, chaps, if we can squeeze a few stories in before we go. The Sunday Times, and it seems middle-class parents are enthusiastic about apprenticeships, just not for their own children, Nick.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Families back apprenticeships over universities, but for other people's children. So I don't know if this is a kind of they're able to be rational about other kids, or if it's just if they're overcautious with their own kids, or if they're just snobbish. But they're essentially saying that this is from the Public First. They've done a survey, and it basically found that exactly what I just said. That most people, they think it's not great to go to university except for their own kids. Very strange. I mean, I remember going back home to my hometown, and lots of us had degrees, and one person didn't. He was the only one with a house. Do you know what I mean? Basically, he'd been a bit of a bully at school, a bit of an idiot, but he'd been an electrician, so suddenly he had a fairly expensive house. We all had nothing, and he sort of thought, we've been cheated a little bit here. So I'm against university. I say don't go. They're all lefties. It's all brainwashing, and it's pointless unless you're doing like medicine or something.
And also, it's not even face to face. You've got pre-recorded Zoom lectures.
Yes, and it all shuts down during
saving
pandemic.
Carbon emissions. That's the important.
No, is that what it's all about?
There's no commute to uni anymore.
Dimitri, let's talk about the middle classes and au pairs becoming a bit expensive.
Yeah, so this is a story from the Telegraph, and the fact that the cost of a nanny has soared by about £10,000 a year to the average middle-class home that can afford one.
And is this like an au pair or a real proper nanny?
It was either. All of them have.
Well, because you know the difference between an au pair and a nanny. The nanny is normally like a professional childcare expert who's trained, maybe got a degree, certificates, sometimes a uniform. And an au pair is a depressed 17-year-old Italian who misses her boyfriend, who doesn't know where the dishwasher is.
Key difference.
I hate to sound unkind about it, but that's what the au pairs I had were like.
You've had au pairs?
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was 38. It wasn't appropriate. I'd like to apologise to everyone. But no, I grew up when my parents were very busy running a pub, and my mum just needed some help, and so we just would accept these girls, and they would spend 6 weeks or 2 months. Sometimes they were amazing, and we hated to let them go, and they became family friends, and some of others were useless.
Yeah, I guess that just depends on people. But so there's a crisis with au pairs because of Brexit. So it's harder to get work visas for all these people and stuff like that. But this is the £10,000 a year is actually more for nannies. You know, who'd work the average salary. They say it's gone up by £10,000 a year, but that's from a decade ago. And you know they're being paid right now on average around £36,000 for a 50-hour work week, which isn't great. And the fact that this is a terrible story, I frankly just fine, do whatever. All I think that this is going to lead to is an increase in the number of children being sent to boarding schools. These parents don't want to spend time with them.
It's true.
I was shocked that nannies who don't live with their employers now make $42,000 in London. I'm considering it. The only problem is dealing with children. If they could take that part out.
Nick, have you ever had an au pair?
Not an au pair, Mark. I'm from the north. But we did have like nannies sometimes because my parents worked all the time. Yeah.
Nannies or babysitters?
In the north, it's nannies. We don't have au pairs. That's a middle class thing.
Babysitters are just depressed 17-year-old British kids that miss their boyfriend.
I thought they bring them over.
They normally do. The Sunday Telegraph once again, and you're somewhat of an authority on this subject, Nick. Will getting girls to not worry about what they're wearing help their mental state?
Yes, thanks for that intro, Mark. It's private girls' schools' relaxed dress code to stop negative impact on mental health. This is the Girls' Day School Trust, which represents 23 private schools and 2 academies. And they're claiming that by getting rid of strict rules about hair and nail colour, that suddenly this is going to help girls' mental health. and they're going to bring in now girls. Basically, now they're going to be allowed to have blue hair and stuff, and you're going to see everything degenerate from there. It's a chicken and egg question. Do woke people have blue hair, or do you have blue hair and you suddenly become woke? That would be my fear.
Something in a dye.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Because the one good day of education I had was in junior school. They did a themed Victorian day just for a bit of fun, and they taught us exactly how you couldn't do it now. They taught us how the Victorians would have for a day, and I thought this is how it should be. Strict. And you've seen that Michaela school recently that was on the telly, the Michaela Community School, which is famously very strict. I mean, it helps inner city kids, but it's been criticised for being ultra disciplined. That's the way we should go. This story is going towards getting rid of all rules because it's hurting people's mental health, but it's just clearly going to lead to decline and lack of discipline and standards.
I think it will help the children's mental health because it will enable the school to identify the ones that need help.
I see.
As they move along the colour spectrum, you're like, that one's blue, help needed now. That one's pink, give it a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
see how it goes. Yeah.
Speaking about give it a couple of weeks, tell me about fruit forests. This in the Sunday Times.
Where is this?
This is like to deal with the cost of living crisis, right?
Yes. So this is exactly it. So councils and community groups are planting edible forests for use by the public. Just in case, people can't afford food, they can go and pick fruit at their local forest, which I don't know if they know, but a lot of these problems are in inner cities, and it's kind of hard to plant enough trees. Also, who needs help in 3 years' time? That's kind of my thing. I kind of don't know somebody who knows they're going to be hungry in 3 years' time, unless you're planning a fast.
And also fruit. I mean, OK, it's all well and good. I guess it's relatively good for you, but it's not really food, is it?
Oh no, they'll plant veggies as well, but it's like
it's not meat, though, is it?
No, it's not meat. But you can hunt the pigeons that deliver messages to your door.
That's a very good point. Some of those woke pigeons.
Yep.
On their way to Davos.
And also, by the way, if you're relying on your local fruit forest and you see an overweight person, you might be going, I think you've had your fair share.
That's a good point, by the way. My goodness. Bit of tough love. Who knew? The Sunday Times again, and all is not well in Thailand, Nick, a country you visit about 3 times a year.
Yeah,
You've got relatives there, haven't you?
That's what it is, Mark. Sex massages and hush money are rather too enlightened Buddhist monks. So, yeah, basically there's this monk, I'm not trying to be rude, I can't pronounce his name, it's Pongsakorn Chankai, something like along. I even tried to find out how to pronounce it and couldn't, it's that obscure. But he's disgraced himself with a number of dubious things. He had an affair with an actress, and they're not supposed to be doing that. This is interesting. He became a money-raising machine in a country where donations to monks and temples are seen as part of the Buddhist concept of merit-making and treated by some Thais as down payment for the afterlife. I love that system. You can donate and you'll get a better. You won't come back as a beetle or whatever it is. But it says this month he was summoned to a police station where he acknowledged a charge of removing $14,000 from temple funds to secure the silence of an embittered former lover. Not really what the monks are supposed to be getting up to. So it's another story about degeneracy and decline. It's not just in our countries. It's happening everywhere.
I know that's what the story is sold as, but I just don't think it's the right view because the guy is 23, right? The actress is 37. I think if there was seduction, he didn't seduce her. So I see this as a faithful, religious young man who's been led astray by an actress who then demanded money from him.
I'm the same, Dimitri. When in doubt, back the cleric. The men of cloth. They're good people.
They
I've
don't
changed
do
my
anything
mind.
wrong.
You're right. I'm on your side now.
Yeah,
Believe all men.
Yes, and by the way, this is my down payment for my afterlife.
Listen, only a couple of seconds on this, but Spain bans catcalling women in the streets. But opponents bemoan hatred of beauty and men. Dimitri, have you ever catcalled?
No, I haven't, but that's because I'm not manly enough.
Well, I know with the whistling thing, I can't do the whistle.
Yeah. I think you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work when it's silent.
Yeah. I mean...
For dogs, though.
What is a catcall?
He's just shouting
Oi,
out.
oi.
Is that right?
Right, love.
Oh, somebody knows.
Yeah, wow,
too much knowledge there.
Yeah.
I haven't done it, Mark, because I'm not a builder, but I think it's going too far to ban it. It's like this thing of making misogyny a hate crime. This is going too far. Plus, also, who are we leaving this up to? Women. They'll mess it up. Am I right? Just wanted to get that in
well, look,
there.
I tell you what, on that controversial note, thanks to the brilliant Dimitri Bakanov and the wonderful Nick Dixon. We'll do it all again tomorrow at 11. And I'm back in the hot seat for Mark Dolan tonight at 9. See you then.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome along to Neil Oliver Live on GB News TV and on radio. Tonight, well, have you heard about the Better Way conference? Of course you haven't. Well, you will tonight. Also, we'll discover the so-called postcode lottery for end-of-life care for children in the UK. Plus, we'll meet two women who have almost run 100 marathons in 100 days. All of that and more coming up. But first, an update on the latest news from Polly Middlehurst.
Neil, thank you. The top stories on GB News tonight. Donald Trump has told a pro-gun convention in America that security in schools across the country needs to be ramped up. The former president was speaking at a National Rifle Association convention held just days after the murders of 19 primary school children and 2 of their teachers in Texas. Hundreds of protesters were gathered outside the arms show, holding up photographs of the dead children and calling for tighter gun controls. Trump, however, rejected their demands, instead calling for a top-to-bottom overhaul of school security.
There should be strong exterior fencing, metal detectors, and the use of new technology to make sure that no unauthorized individual can ever enter the school with a weapon. No one should ever be able to get anywhere near a classroom until they have been checked, scanned, screened, and fully approved.
In other news today, Boris Johnson says the West is working to avert a global food crisis by releasing millions of tons of grain and corn currently blocked in Ukrainian ports. The Prime Minister told President Zielinski of Ukraine that Britain and the G7 are attempting to end the Russian blockade. President Putin has told leaders of France and Germany that Moscow is willing to discuss ways to make it possible for Ukraine to export the grain from Black Sea ports. Meanwhile, Russian forces claim to have taken control of a key rail hub in the eastern part of the country. That comes after officials in Kyiv say soldiers may need to retreat from their last stronghold there to avoid being captured. The Kremlin has sent thousands of troops into the Luhansk region in an attempt to encircle Ukrainian forces still fighting to protect the area. Here, the UK Health Secretary Sajid Javid has said the risk to the public regarding monkeypox remains very low. This comes as Ireland confirmed its first case of the virus. The Health Service executives say the case was confirmed in the east of the country last night. Yesterday, the UK Health Security Agency said the number of cases in England was 101 and the